The Watcher in the Woods, Part 1. I had always been a skeptic. Ghost stories, urban legends, and tales of the supernatural never held much sway over me. That was until I spent a summer in my late grandfather's cabin, deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. The isolation was meant to be a retreat, a chance to clear my head and work on my novel. Instead, it became a nightmare that I still struggled to wake from. The cabin was a relic of simpler times, with no electricity or running water. It sat at the edge of a dense forest that stretched for miles. The surrounding wilderness was breathtaking, with towering trees and the sound of a nearby stream providing a serene backdrop. My first few days there were peaceful. I spent my mornings writing and my afternoons exploring the woods, immersing myself in the untouched beauty of nature. The nights, however, were another story. It started with small things, strange noises outside the cabin, barely audible over the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. At first, I dismissed them as animals. But then, on the fourth night, I heard something unmistakably human, whispering. The whispering was faint, a soft murmur that seemed to come from all directions at once. I sat up in bed, straining to hear. The voices were just beyond the window, too low to make out any words but unmistakably human. My pulse quickened as I crept to the window and peered into the darkness. Nothing, just the black, impenetrable woods. The next day, I found footprints around the cabin. They were almost human-like, but truly unlike any I'd ever seen. The toes were elongated, almost claw-like, and the prints were deeper than any person could make without a considerable amount of weight. I felt a chill run down my spine but convinced myself it was a prank or perhaps an animal I wasn't familiar with. That night, the whispers came again, closer this time. I barricaded myself in the cabin, lighting candles, and clutching a rusty old hatchet I found under the bed. The whispering continued, ebbing and flowing like the tide, punctuated by soft, almost inaudible footsteps circling the cabin. Sleep was impossible. I spent the entire night on edge, waiting for something to happen. Just as dawn began to break, the whispers stopped. Exhausted, I finally drifted into a fitful sleep. I awoke to find more footprints, now smeared with what looked like blood. They led from the forest edge to my front door and then back again. The sight of the crimson-stained prints made my stomach churn. I knew then that whatever was out there wasn't just an animal or a prankster. It was something far more sinister, desperate. I decided to leave. I packed my things and started the long hike back to civilization. As I trudged through the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, set my heart racing. The forest, once serene and welcoming, now felt like a trap, its shadows concealing unseen eyes that tracked my every move. Halfway through my journey, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned campsite. The tents were shredded, and the ground was littered with torn clothes and personal belongings. There were no signs of the campers. No bodies. Just more of those eerie, claw-like footprints. Panic set in. I ran, not caring about the path or the direction, just wanting to escape the oppressive woods. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more insistent. It felt as if the forest itself was alive, conspiring to keep me within its grasp. As the sun began to set, I found myself at the edge of a small clearing. In the center stood a towering oak tree, its gnarled branches stretching out like twisted fingers. Hanging from one of the branches was an old, weathered sign. The words were barely legible, but I could make out enough to feel my blood run cold. Beware the watcher in the woods, heard a low, guttural growl behind me. Turning slowly, I saw a figure emerging from the shadows. It was tall and thin, with elongated limbs and eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. The whispers grew louder, more frenzied, as the figure advanced. I bolted, adrenaline surging through my veins. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I burst out onto a road and flagged down a passing car. The driver, an old man with a kind face, listened to my story with a grim expression. He told me I was lucky to be alive. He spoke of an ancient legend, a spirit that haunted those woods, luring them in with whispers and then taking them one by one. I never went back to that cabin. I never even finished my novel. The whispers still haunt me, though, especially on quiet nights when the wind rustles the trees outside my window. I can still hear them, calling me back to the woods.